Well, hello everyone. Welcome to the day 2 of, I want to say, struggle. Not really. We're trying to discover in how many ways we can basically set up and break Archlinux in order to make it super convenient and easy. I just need to set one more thing. Hooray! Sadly, once again, I didn't have any time for checking whether the audio and video delay, the synchronization is fixed or is it not. Maybe I'll do that later. If it bothers you especially, do say so. But yesterday I was watching Big Lebowski on a public free screening in the city center, which was quite a cool experience, I have to admit. Oh yeah, boom, a bit more cozy. So yesterday, we kinda broke Grub in a way where I think it basically lost any sense of idea where anything is. So, oh yeah, I have not. Ah, shit. Because we definitely need to boot everything from ArchISO. Oh yeah, I have to also say, because I always either not say it at all or maybe mention it at the very end of the stream. There is a Discord server where you can get me. It's not necessarily listed in this transmission, but if you go to any of my main channel YouTube videos, there is an invite link. So if you are watching this after the fact and you want to come by and say hi, then there is such opportunity. Hooray. So I have also done some very basic research, but I really didn't delve too much into that after the stream. There is a very weird way, like grab booting unified kernel image or booting other EFI things is done very statically, which is very weird. I do know one person yesterday linked me basically ArchWiki paragraph for grab and EFI, UEFI boot, but it has the exact problem I was talking about during the stream, which is the grab, from what I've seen, maybe it's not like that, but from what I've seen at up until now, does not auto scan your EFI directory for EFI binaries to boot from. You can set a static menu entry that basically tells that boot this and this EFI binary. The problem is, if you are generating unified kernel image, most of the time it's like, I don't know, it's named like Arch kernel version, and then it has like a unique hash. So mostly due to that hash, but not only, you can't really make static entries unless you script the shit out of it. Which I know I could do, but I really don't want to, because once again, this is supposed to be Archlinux for gamers. It's supposed to be easy to maintain, easy to install, and basically fire and forget. But we need to understand how it works before we tell other people how to do it and what to install and stuff like that. Hence why I am not using the auto installers for Arch. So we basically want to mount everything and go to truth. So mount def NVMe 2 and 1 P2, and then we want to mount the first partition into MNT EFI, and then we can use a helper function which is archroot to basically root into /MNT, and now we are within our system that sadly does not want to boot. So from what I remember, the problem is Grub completely forgot like how to identify which partition it's on, like where to find everything. Like it's completely broken. The Grub itself does boot because it's located in the EFI Grub. Like it's right here, and it does fire up that binary. The problem is that I think if it goes to boot grub, and here's like the grub CFG, my assumption is that the information generated here is false, or maybe it's not even possibly trying to read data from this file, because it does seem to use unique identifiers. F9E8 OSBLK minus O plus UUID. F9E8. Interesting. We may do a control reboot because I don't know, maybe the problem fixed itself. I doubt that, but it's always worth checking. So at least we know that the unique ID is fine. If custom, then menu entry. I mean, we can like grab install. Interesting. Oh, interesting. Oh, so basically there are some things that have happened that I don't fully understand. Basically, grub install does think that EFI is in boot directory while it needs to be, from what I see, explicitly pointed to here. So what's the exact output? Generating grab, found Linux image, found init image, found fallback image. OS prober will not be executed. Perfect. Systems on them will not be added. Perfect. So let's, oh yeah, by the way, EFI boot manager. We have our, because now that I've thought about it, there is a slight possibility I might have some leftover grab trash on my other drives. So I just want to make sure that everything is working properly. Is there a way for grab to regenerate UEFI entries and make sure it does that? Because I can do that manually. I'm just wondering if there's like an option that does everything for me. Okay, so basically only EFI boot manager. So first option is Windows boot orders 2, 3, 5, 6. So boot current is 6. We have grab from EFI grab. We have some trash options. So how do I delete? I need to look up my cheat sheet. EFI boot manager minus small b 2 minus big B. So now we have first two options, Windows Boot Manager, and first three options, sorry. Then we have grab, lsblk minus l plus uuid. Isn't that grab entry wrong? Or maybe I am looking at that ID the wrong way. I think it might be the case. The EFI partitions have very weird IDs. By the way, Windows has terrible fucking, or maybe, I don't know what was that, but we do have two similar identical unique identifiers, which are basically just a date. You know what? Just to be safe, I will delete this EFI boot manager minus B 5 minus B. Create disk NVMe 2 N1 2N1 partition 1 label grub, and our loader is EFI grub grab x64 EFI. If I remember correctly. I think it didn't like that I used the capital L for label. Yep. it's here and it has the same ID. Okay, we will see how that goes. Perfect, so we at least have a proper menu. I know it's small. Mm. Okay, it works. Nice. So you can focus on basically not being successful in all the other things I wanted to achieve. So you might be wondering what the hell just happened and why it didn't work yesterday and why it works now. Basically, I think because I did start to add some custom boot options. And I think that might have messed up everything. Shit, sadly I have to do the same shenanigans I've been doing yesterday. Updates available. I mean, sure, why not? Org Free Desktop Platform GL NVIDIA. Those are, I think, Flatpaks. Oh shit. AMD Ucode, new kernel, new Plasma, a bunch of firmwares. So before I do that, I actually want to check one thing. We can start a new session. It's a new day, new me. So, BTRFS snapshot grub. How exactly does that work? So what features does it have? Automatically lists snapshots existing on the root partition, automatically detect if boot is a separate partition, automatically detect kernel in RAMFS, Intel AMD microcode in boot directory within snapshots, automatically create corresponding menu entries in grub CFG, automatically detect the type tags, triggers, and descriptions, comments of snapper, timeshift, yeah, blah, 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 blah. Automatically generate grub CFG if you use the provided systemd OpenRC service. So basically, this is one of the reasons why I am sticking so hard to grub. So I will start with the thing that I think has the most sense. Systemd boot, yes. First installation with YASTMODs, blah 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 blah. Yes, I know we are not an OpenSUSE, by the way. In order to integrate systemd boot with BTRFS snapshots, some extra tooling is required. Upstream does not support it at this point, but it's a work in progress. How the extra tooling works is explained in this document. Systemd boot supports is experimental. Don't do this in production unless you know how to recover from boot failures. Micro OS, blah blah blah. If etc, make sure loader type to empty so the other tools do not accidentally run scripts for a different bootloader. Remove traces of grub. Install system deboot utilities. Exit from transactional. That's some system D stuff. SD boot util. System deboot will not update itself in the EFI partition. Updated via, okay. From when is this post? It probably has date at the very bottom. First boot with system deboot may select wrong snapshot. Workaround by holding the spacebar on the first boot and select the correct from the menu. Press D. What the fuck? It's non-functional at all. So from what it seems like this has a high chance of just working and basically auto detecting stuff. Pacman R grub. Yeah, get this shit out of my face. What was that file that had the there was a file where I was defining stuff for building the unified kernel image. By the way, system ukify or mkinit CPU seems to be able to build the unified kernel image, but the kernel parameters and stuff, it seems like it did fully omit. Yeah, the kernel install stuff. Okay, that's not really revolutionary. So I think it's okay. Yeah, same here. I think yesterday I was kind of not aware which takes precedence. Okay, so we have deleted grub. We might as well just get rid of it entirely. Okay. So bootctl. Nice. So now let's try and rebuild our image. Yeah, I mean, I really wish most of those hooks would be included within the package itself. You're basically getting like a software and you're expected to edit every configuration file it has because it comes with no sane defaults. Unified kernel image generation successful. Building image preset. By the way, we do, because we did try and boot that unified kernel image yesterday. You know what? Actually, I do wonder what systemd boot can do just for us. So yeah, you know what? Let's see what happens. Yeah, I do think I need to refresh my... Okay, so now we have Linux boot manager. So I think this is the entry that was added. UEFI OS. And this is our ArchUSB. So first, let's go to the Linux boot manager. It just booted without any menu. Oh, that's interesting. Now I didn't have to fiddle around with switching the outputs. So what has happened? So, okay, I have so many, maybe not questions, theories and ideas. Because, by the way, I don't know what resolution we did have previously, but I think now it's definitely bigger. By the way, I'm using... Oh, and now our... Excuse me. Our NVIDIA driver is broken. God damn. So what exactly have we... What have we run? Okay. Firmware UEFI, blah, blah, blah. Current bootloader, systemd boot. Current stub, systemd stub. 2561 Arch. So it has actually booted the kernel image. That is very, very interesting. So we have single one. And this is why I wanted to postpone the kernel image upgrade, like kernel upgrade. I want to see whether it will add next one without removing the old one. That's first thing. Using grub or systemd. I've just uninstalled grub and switched to systemd boot. I fixed the issue I've had yesterday where I basically fucked grub over. But now, just out of curiosity, I've switched to systemd boot. And it does seem to be very, very much superior booting option. But yeah, the NVIDIA driver is also broken. So by the way, let's upgrade the system, because there is a lot of stuff to upgrade from what it seems. Yeah, solid grab is the source of all problems. I mean, everything did work, but there are some strange things I've noticed just now. Mainly, uh, when I was booting the system with grub, I had to start and stop my capture card in the OBS because when it switched from CLI to KDE, I had to basically, for some reason, switch over to some other input device and then back to Camlink, which basically means that it was like soft rebooted. But now that I've switched to system deboot, which boots itself in UEFI mode, I know Group can do that too, and I think it also was booting in UEFI mode, but the system deboot was booting not the /boot VM Linux init ramfs stuff like that. It was booting the other unified kernel image. As soon as it started booting the unified kernel image, I noticed that I do not have to restart the capture card whenever I run the graphical interface. So it's really interesting. Also, the CLI booted in a much bigger resolution than compared to when it was booting from Grub, because this is like a 4K capture card. So I don't know whether it auto negotiated bigger resolution or what resolution it was previously on. Honestly, I admit I have not checked. Okay, we have some errors. Failed to commit transactions. Linux firmware NVIDIA exists in this file system. I wonder what's calling those packages, because I do have like NVIDIA Open DKMS reinstalling and up to date. I guess this has to be like a quick lesson in Pacman. Yeah. Oh, yeah, I think I know why. Maybe there was no need to restart the capture card because we stayed on the same resolution throughout the boot process. And maybe when we were booting from Grub, we were like going with the up and down with the resolution, because now I think everything is captured in 4K. Yeah, okay, Pacman check. Before I do that, can I increase like the just overall like scaling? I think I can. Oh, systemd also handles some EFI boot files. Strangely, I had to clean install the LTS and add NVIDIA from there because System76 had issues with its default systemd boot configs. Basically, the problem was that Grub does not necessarily, or I don't know how to make Grub try and auto-discover EFI images. It basically only does the traditional /boot VM Linux init ramfs thingy. And system deboot is the exact opposite. It basically takes care of booting the EFI binaries. As for NVIDIA, I do have an inclining as to what's wrong. And we can very quickly at least semi-verify, because when we go to the EFI Linux, this is our kernel image that we've booted, unified kernel image, but if we list it, it only has 64 megs. So 100% it does not have NVIDIA modules included. I don't know if it has to have them included, but from my experience when I was using Dracut, everything had been included in the unified kernel image, making it like 400, 500 megs in size. I don't know what edits you got on your system, but also Windows Boot Manager loves to cause problems. No, that's not an issue. Have you scanned your system's blacklists? Mm, I'm not sure what you mean. I mean, I do know my way around EFI boot manager and stuff like that, so I 100% know what I have booted because I also do boot everything by, the boot menu during the system startup. Systemd blacklists. Um, no, I haven't, but I have to say that this worked before. Mm, the reason I know it does not work is that NVIDIA SMI cannot do anything. And the Pacman is showing me those weird packages, those weird firmware packages. So we will do the most intelligent thing we can. By the way, it may be still too small, so we can go to 200 maybe. Okay. I think now everybody can comfortably see everything. Oh, it's a thread from today. Interesting. Read the news on the front page. There's a special place in hell for people who respond like this. So, funny enough, today's the day that Archlinux introduced some interesting breaking changes. I have to be careful when upgrading my work laptop. Unfortunately, this coincided with Upstream recognizing the symlink layout of the NVIDIA firmware, resulting in situation that Pacman cannot handle. When attempting to upgrade from, you will see following errors. To progress with the system, you need to remove and reinstall the package. Okay. We'll see how that goes. At least it seems it's trying to compile the DKMS. By the way, yesterday got me an idea as to I should make a bot for the stream that basically has some, I don't know, basic commands like exclamation PC or stuff like that. I've also had like an idea about because somebody asked me, I don't know, yesterday or the day before that on the stream, what games I am going to play on the gaming Archlinux. And I've had this idea that let's say I will give myself a budget of, I don't know, 20, 30, $40, and I would allow the chat to vote on a game if I do not have it already in my library to basically buy and play. Ideally, I would like it to be a game from a list of games that do have included benchmarks, like a benchmark option. It streamlines a lot of things. But I know that Word is not ideal, so you can't really have all that. Okay, it seems that this has been created just now, like 70 minutes past 5. So I will try and reboot, and we will see where we are with NVIDIA. Because this also might be the MK init CPO might need be explicitly told to include the NVIDIA DKMS. By the way, this UEFI OS I think is like a direct. I want to try this UEFI OS because previously we've tried the Linux boot manager. Systemd might have some fallbacks. Yeah, I think it did have some. It basically is a fallback option. Oh, and now the font is big. So so I think I know what's happening. Or I don't. So we still have booted from the EFI. Okay. Seems that everything is fine. Let's start the plasma. Oh, and this is exactly what I was talking about. So is it really that dependent on the boot entry? Because I now need to switch my input device. And now I need to switch back, and now here we are. And as you can see, it's not 4K. And it's working now. So NVIDIA SMI isn't working. I know a good set of steps to check each implementation level. It's working. I mean, to be honest, if you have a recent CPU, I mean, on desktop it's a whole can of worms, right? On servers, it's way easier, obviously. Yeah, now we're on full HD. Interesting. So let me restart once again. It's pretty much fire and forget, I do have to say. The NVIDIA Open driver for 50 series, or maybe even 40 series. Unless you have like a very old GPU, then. Okay, but now I do need to once again switch my. What did you break last time? Grub. I think the stream is publicly available, so if you skip to the last, I don't know, 5 minutes, you can see how I basically broke Grub. I did fix it, and then I deleted Grub entirely. And I switched to systemd boot. Okay, so I need to adjust my Fury. I think I need to do this weird switching thing whenever NVIDIA is loaded. Because now it works, and previously it didn't. Very interesting. So now we have unified kernel image working, NVIDIA drivers working, we have systemd boot instead of grub. So now what we want to check are BTRFS snapshots. Sadly, the easy way is using BTRFS root snapshots with grub, but we've basically deleted grub. So BTRFS snapshots system deboot. The OpenSUSE kinda says that system deboot has a chance of basically just supporting it. What I am a bit worried is that I haven't seen any menu from the system deboot. Mm. What are some, I don't know, go-to packages to manage BTRFS snapshots, like time machine, I want to say? Like Fedora Magazine is not necessarily good choice, but honestly, in my opinion, United Kernel Image are actually amazing. I mean, it's just something UEFI made possible. There are basically very good when it comes to just having a single file and streamlining the boot process, yes. I've never experienced a menu with systemd, it's way easier. I mean, in that case, why use systemd boot? Just make a EFI boot manager entry. I mean, it does have many fallbacks and options because I did discover some interesting things. Basically, for example, there's just a quick example. If we go to EFI, some older laptops or maybe some older UEFI implementation in BIOS will not boot no matter what unless your EFI binary is in boot directory and it's called bootx64.efi. I don't know why. It may be a legacy issue not present in the modern laptops, but if you have some older laptop, it may ignore everything and explicitly look for this single file. So basically what I wanted to say is systemd does have some fallbacks prepared just for that occasion. Yes, our system is BTRRFS. I've been restoring old computers that die on Windows 11 to Pop! OS and that ability to use Linux editing tools and file directory GUI. Yeah, I mean, I want to say that Windows is once again leading the charge with making people basically upgrade and not support 30 years of hardware. Which, to be honest, I don't necessarily say is a very, very bad thing. It is annoying, obviously, but it's not necessarily evil. And I do see the reasons behind that. So easy to catch an issue with a fallback. Yeah, I mean, BTRFS is quite interesting when it comes to having restore points that actually work on a desktop. But we do need to remember, and I don't think people are aware of how basically snapshots work. Time shift or snapper. Snapper is a tool created by OpenSUSE that helps with managing snapshots and thin provisional VM volumes. It can create and compare snapshots, revert between, and support automatic snapshot timelines. Whereas Timeshift is a tool originally created by, now part of the Zap project. Timeshift helps, blah blah blah. Swari Tahraya. Hello, hello. Mm, I always assume that Timeshift sounds really Apple-like. It supports AirSync snapshots for all systems. I use Arch, by the way. Yeah, me too. We all are here using Arch. It supports AirSync snapshots for all file system and use built-in snapshot feature for BTRFS. Configure to use add and add home subvolume layout root home directory respectively. I will sound very biased, but Snapper does says it has OpenSUSE support behind them. Thus, it kind of makes it a bit more interesting, and I want to say future-proof. And I literally have like systemd boot, Snapper, whatever integration right in front of me on OpenSUSE knowledge base article. So we can try that. I did install it, but it has no GUI. For some reason, it's not launching. I've Hyperland Wayland Arch, by the way. Yeah, I mean, typically it's supposed to do that. Like, you need to install the graphical environment for yourself. And even after you install it, you need to make sure it auto runs whenever you boot the system, which is a basically not really an entirely new thing, but the next step. What was that sdboot util snapper? I don't think that is called like that on Arch. Install snapper package, the development version. Additionally, GUIs are available with... Jesus, why everything has to be in R? So let's install snapper. Before creating a snapper configuration for BTRFS subvolume must already exist. If it does not, you should create it before generating a snapper configuration. Unified kernel images are actually pretty cool. For secure boot setups, you only have to sign like what, a UQI itself. Honestly, I don't use SBCTL because it's like a pain. Manual process of creating your own keys. I do have a secure Archlinux guide on this channel on as the main video. I think I even released like quite recently, like 2 or 3 weeks ago, 2025 revision. And yeah, basically it streamlines everything a lot. I think I do use SBCTL because it does have it like you can generate your keys with a single command very easily. So SBCTL does have its place. Sadly, it does have some retarded hooks, so there is a section in that tutorial about that, but it's not bad. It also but by the way, it also has a very cool feature where it does tell you whether your motherboard has some known firmware related and kind of security related issues, and it does point you to an article where you can read more about that or how to mitigate that. Why isn't it just doing backup sysfile? No need to let it run on background. Yeah. I'm not sure what you mean. So let's try some graphical user interface for Snapper, just because I'm lazy. So what are the options? BTRFS Assistant and Snapper Tools. Garuda Linux. It sounds very Final Fantasy-like. Ricardo MV. BTRFS assistant. There really aren't any like If you installed Arch using suggested BTRFS partition layout from Arch install version older then the snapshots of volume will already be mounted and snap or create config command will fail. The microcode packages I have in the early microcode flag in the script, I use the pacman hook for generating the UKI after a kernel upgrade. Nice. Unmount snapshots. Okay, so we basically have done none of that, by the way. We just, when I was installing this Arch, I basically did mkfs btrfs /root, and then I packstrapped the system onto it. Snapper root create. So I do want to try the dev, but okay, this is the dev. You know what? Let's just try one. And just because it has like a Ricardo in the name. Oh, I might want to check one thing. 5 year 12. Okay, so maybe let's not try this one. By the way, what's it written in Python? Maybe let's not try this one. It seems to be horribly unmaintained. One week ago. Okay, so this has nice logo and more recent commits. 1 year ago, 4 months ago, 4 months ago. 4 months is reasonable, I would say. So maybe let's go with BTRFS assistant. It does seem to basically have a bit more support. I do have to say, the more I like configure this, the less I like it as an option for people to basically be able to point and say, install Arch and the games will work. I mean, kinda maybe, but I do discover more and more extra stuff that needs to be done if you want to have this basically extra nice. Depends. Qt6, Snapper, BTRFS. Seriously, I don't have CMake? Interesting. So I'll let it compile and go for a quick bio break. So be right back. And I'm back. The compiling content BTRFS. Okay, everyone, what do you prefer, system deboot or grub? If we could only make a survey. You're going to ask me for a root password anyway. By the way, just as a reminder, this is a test password I'm using for stream. I am not using 3 letters password. So, you know, just so you know, and don't pick up the bad practices. Do as I say and not as I do. This stream is sponsored by... It's not, but... I've seen this on store shelves and I always wanted to try it. Okay. File system. Enable quotas, refresh BTRFS data, allocated. Scrub no errors found. Subvolumes snapper. Snapper settings. So, okay, once again, overview, allocated, used, free. You have lots of free space, did you? Oh, fuck you. I did buy this drive specifically for this purpose and those streams, but you're calling me out on being a data hoarder. Var lib machines and portables created on the 16th. Really? I mean, is it left over from when I was playing around with this? To be honest, I don't really want to delete this, but I want to delete this. Do you recommend separating kernel other files from the EFI files, like EFI part at the EFI and let the VM Linux chill and boot? You are either booting unified kernel image and you are pretty much ignoring the boot entirely, or you are just booting a stub and you are falling back to the /boot things. I personally really like the unified kernel image a lot, but in some cases it may result in a very large file sizes of over 400, 500 megs in size. Other than that, I would say that more intelligent people have spent way more time thinking over this. I wish that UEFI as a standard was more properly adopted and standardized. So it says it has no config. Also, I would also say that those are the things that don't necessarily matter at all. The important thing is that your system runs and you can start applications or programs. Working with BTRFS, yeah, that was the Fedora magazine. So Snapper says, or the BTRFS assistant says that no config. So create a new configuration. Before creating a snapper, must already exist, blah, 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 to create a new snapper configuration named config. So let's try doing that for the whole root partition. And that does mean that EFI partition will not be included in the snapshot, but that is something I am completely aware of. So snapper C config create config root, obviously. And did that work? Did that just work? It may have not detected. Okay. So, so let's say we have this snapshot. And let's update everything. And then we will try to roll back. And we will see how difficult the rollback process is. It's quite good. It does taste like Monte. Okay, so we do already have some changes in our file system. But ideally, I would like it to work up to the point where you have boot menu entries, where it gives you the list of snapshots and you can then choose to boot from. Because in this configuration, if your system works, your snapshots work. But let's say you break your system and you want to, okay, fuck this, I need this working within like 3 to 5 minutes, and I need to restore everything, then this does not work. I'm actually mount my EFI partition at /EFI. I think this is weird because grub expects EFI partition to live within boot. And I don't know why, but this installation, after basically allowing it to install system ukify, mknCPO, etc., decided for me to mount EFI at /EFI. Either that or I made some mistake when I was initially installing the system. Okay, snapper settings. So this is what I don't necessarily like. Because I know that, okay, if you break everything, then you can basically root and then tell it to revert and stuff like that. But this is terrible. This is terrible for the end user. This looks like absolute shit. As the boot util, I wonder if this package or if this program is available. Oh, not sbctl, just bootctl. Man, bootctl. What? What can man tell us about bootctl? Can check and manage and bootloader entries and install, update, or remove. Reboot to firmware list. Clean up. Oh, it deletes the EFI files, not the EFI boot entries. Bootloader interface commands, set default, set timeout. Sets the bootloader menu timeout in seconds. Okay. Random seed generates a random seed and stores it in the EFI partition for use by the systemd bootloader. If a random seed already exists, it is refreshed. Also generate random system token and stores it persistently as an EFI variable, if one has not been set before. If the bootloader finds the random seed in the ESP, it will derive a random seed to pass to the OS, a new seed from the ESB, a combination of both. The random seed passed to the OS is credited to the kernel entropy pool and the system manager during early boot and permits user space to boot with an entropy pool fully initialized very early on. Also see interesting. Kernel image commands, identify, inspect, options. EFI boot option description, dry run, secure boot, no pager, JSON help. Bootloader interface command, set timeout. So bootctl set timeout, and we will set it for 30 seconds. Maybe it does try and display some menu. Maybe it just auto skips it if it's their only one option. This is another thing that I wanted to see. Basically in Debian, or I don't know, Ubuntu, my experience is from Debian. You do have the last three kernels or generated images and stuff available, which for me did came quite in handy quite sometimes. At work on server grade deployments, obviously, but still. And I was wondering, but by the way, that's 9 years ago, so. And I was wondering whether there's an option for that also here. It's also like 12 years ago. Hey, heyo. I also moved kernel files over to boot. I mean, EFI stuff has to be on the EFI partition. Okay, so we have added the timeout. Let's see whether it does anything, to be honest. I think I sadly have to do the thing again. There is a menu. Nice. You just randomly came across my feed. Lol, I installed Mint a few days ago. Seems as if YouTube wants me to try Arch. If Mint works for you, then just stick to Mint. Like, there is no need, unless you have one, to switch to another distributions. The distros don't matter. I am only using Arch because I have a recent GPU. I want to have a recent kernel so that the most recent drivers and stuff like that works. If Mint works, then use Mint. So interestingly enough, there is a menu which gives me high hopes, to be honest. You should install Arch, by the way. It's so cozy watching this while eating pizza. You have no idea how good that makes me feel. I know it's daunting, but you can do it. Sorry guys, I had to exchange. Okay, I won't say anything who I was talking to. I was given a death stare. I don't do much gaming. I want to good customizability on my PC, but I can't achieve that on Mint. I can't even change the compositor in Mint. Arch seems to be right up your alley. I would say that if you want, uh, if I were to recommend you any tutorial, I can recommend you mine, obviously. It does say secure Archlinux, but I mean, it is secure, right? Mm. If you go to my channel, the latest vid is secure Arch installation tutorial, blah blah blah. Everything is on GitHub, stuff like that. But I would also say, if you want to use Ubuntu, use Ubuntu. If you want to use, Debian, use Debian. If you want to use easy stuff, use easy stuff. And maybe I don't really want to say easy. If you want to use mainstream stuff, use mainstream stuff because it is just widely supported officially. Personally, the only reason why I am using Arch Linux is because 5 years ago, whenever Wayland was taking over, Debian had no good didn't have any good packages and dependencies required for Wayland and Sway setup. That's basically it. How's Fedora though? I don't like the GNOME DE. Maybe somebody in chat can help you. I don't really hop around distros much. Denmark is increasingly worried Microsoft might turn off for Denmark, so I'm considering switching back to Linux. I've seen the headlines, but actually we might actually read an article. Denmark, Microsoft. So I would like to have some news outlet that that is not terrible. PC Gamer. Ministry only ditching Microsoft Office for the open alternative LibreOffice. Interesting. Your thumbnail is so good, by the way. Thank you. You mean for the stream or for the video? I do try to be as weeb as possible. Though Polit original report. So basically Denmark is just ditching the, I mean, it's not really a small thing to be honest. They are ditching the Microsoft Office, not the Windows itself from what it seems. It's actually interesting why. I would assume that at government level, you just want the features that Microsoft Office gives you. What's DWM? DWM is like dynamic window manager. It's styling, right? It's styling. Denmark is a huge .NET country, so to switch everything is gonna take a while. Yes, obviously, but to be honest, you can run .NET applications on Linux using Mono, which is something some companies have been doing for quite some time. I do remember that back when I was working at CD Projekt, there were some game servers for Gwent that were run on Linux on Mono. Interestingly enough, by design. Okay, so we do have a menu, so let's go to BTRFS Assistant. By the way, just give me a second. Oh, you have to go to sleep. Yeah, have a good night. See you next time. So, yes, this is my manual snapshot. Type single. What's this number 2? At 1800. This was not after like booting the system, right? Sudosu. I want to configure my FS tab. Do you have any recommendation? What do you actually want to configure in your FS tab? Like, do you want to change anything or? I don't necessarily remember how the BTRFS commands worked or what way they're called. BTRFS sub volume list, BTRFS list. BTRFS device list. File system df. Interesting. Sync the fragment BTRFS summary. No. Oh, this is probably what I wanted. Yay. Okay, and now BTRFS. Is it not snapshot? Is it just basically a subvolume? GenFS top by default spits out real time. I want to use no at time. Of course, I'm wondering if I can set no at time on my EFI partition. You'll get pretty much nothing from that, since that partition is not necessarily doing much IO. And I would say that you might actually, on EFI partition, I would like to know when everything is either touched or modified. Oscar ID, what did you broke? I already managed to repair it. Last time, yesterday, I broke grub, and now I actually managed to fix it. And after I fixed grub, I uninstalled it and switched to system deboot. Okay. BTRFS subvolume list. Top level 5 path, snapshots, one snapshot. Are you sure you want to restore? Dot snapshots 1, snapshot 2. Now, name for saved backup optional. Confirm. Okay, so cancel for now. System D boot option for BTRFS snapshots. Archlinux. You may need grab or blah blah. Okay, so you know nothing. There was this OpenSUSE page, but I don't think those packages are available on Arch. Is there like a package browser for Pacman for Arch repositories? Like, so let's look for anything with snapper in the name. So we have snapper and we have snap pack. Pacman hosts that use snapper to create pre-post BTRFS snapshots. Okay, so this is mostly for making sure your ass is covered when you are doing Pacman upgrade. So no, maybe not snapper, maybe BTRFS. Connect collection of bootloaders that boot from FAT, blah blah blah, CDs. Snapper, a tool for managing snapshots, snapback, Python, a library for manipulating block devices. Grab BTRFS. We need this, but for system deboot. Because basically, from what I remember, what happens when you actually want to boot from a snapshot, you are giving the kernel your, because there is like a root ID parameter, which basically identifies your root partition you are booting from, and you can, and since subvolumes have their own unique identifiers, you can basically do a switcheroo, and now you can basically boot from a snapshot. Did you add root flag subvolume add in your system deboot input options? A bootctl status output should be welcome. Hi, I've already checked the Archwiki on this, but there seems to be no solution. I want to move from grub to system deboot, but I have /boot as just a folder on my BTRFS partition. The Archwiki claims that system deboot can boot from any file system your BIOS recognizes, but how do I add drivers, whatever? System deboot only detects Windows 10. By the way, we might check one more thing here. So this is our command line we've been booted from. So interestingly enough, we do have some, so we are still using this shit. And our unified kernel image, I don't think is as unified as it could be. Press it for the Linux package. By the way, Archlinux Yuki. Did I, by the way, miss any note for the MK init CPO? So they do say to modify the preset file. My command line is in my Yuki. This basically tells you, if you cut prots, it basically tells you what are your current kernel command line arguments. It's just root UID. Yeah, that's fine. Default image. Splash archbmp. All caver. Presets, default and fallback. Uh, Fallback options, auto detect, yes please. If all you want to do is to boot from the unified kernel images, you can mount EFI. You can append to use different to on-bit embedding. Interesting. Can I use Dracket to generate a normal Yuki and a fallback one with host only and no host only? Yes. From what I've read, host only basically includes as much additional stuff as it can find to make sure your image is as compatible as possible with anything that it might encounter. So basically it makes sure that it is compatible with not only the current hardware you have running, from what I understand. Okay, so it also is embedding the kernel into the Yuki. Finally, make sure that the directory for the UKIs exists and regenerate intramfs. Optionally remove any leftover. Okay. All I have here is EFI Arch. You do need to basically do some basic reading because I think you will manage to answer those questions after a quick ArchWiki read. I really want to delete this VM Linux. I am so tempted to do so. So, okay, I will move this to root and basically do pacman as Linux broke. New here, what broke? Hey, glad to have you on stream. Sadly, it's already been fixed. Grub. And after that, Grub was deleted. Grub broke. Have you tried turning off on and off again? I've tried to basically turn the stream off and then turn the stream on the day later. Yep, no CMD lines or no CMD lines set. We're using current kernel CMD line. Okay. I have also wanted to quite possibly maybe try the Arch install way and see how the system is configured with that in place. But maybe not today, but I'm just saying that in general. By the way, since there seems to be more people right now, I will maybe tell you now about my grand idea for gaming on Arch. Because I, by the way, do think I do might have to tamper some expectations. I find it more interesting in the process on to how to benchmark the games and the system rather than just to do a full playthroughs, to be honest. But I did have an idea where I could basically have some small budget, like I don't know, $12 or $40 a month, and then basically let the chat decide what game should we buy if I already don't have it in my Steam library on in my game collection in general, and then try and benchmark it and play. But that's just an idea for now. Okay, everything is generated. So okay, so it has recreated the VM Linux. And if we go to EFI, we have now 3 images. Why is it? Whoa, what? Why is the date completely fucked up? It's like, once again, what? Okay. So it has created those 3 images. By the way, the fallback, some reason, is way bigger. What the hell just happened here? Like, created unified kernel in blah, blah, blah. Has it like included more stuff in the fallback? Oh, by the way, I think why it might be sticking around to the VM Linux so much. We might be just, how do I say this, perpetuate the cycle of hatred. We might be perpetuating the cycle of hatred. Fallback is just a copy of the kernel, I believe. Yes, but why is it bigger than the usual images? Like, this one is 130 megs, and the other ones, which we are running right now, are 64 megs. That is the question. It's init RD on steroids. What does that exactly mean? Why is it bigger? What is inside of it to make it so? Where is that configured? Where is the option that says make a fallback, include this, this, and that? That is the question. By the way, I am regenerating the kernel image because I wanted to try one little thing with command line. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. This is not why we are here. We're here to basically break and test stuff. Sadly, we just need to find out how it works. We want to find out how it works. Using command line file. Okay, so it did use. So now be prepared for the system not booting. We'll see whether it will now restart. So reboot, and here we go. Once again. By the way, I might be finishing the stream in 20-30 minutes because we did order some grub. And by grub, I mean food. And we will see when it arrives. Ah, I like this. So now we have multiple images to choose from. So systemd basically just auto-detected EFI stops, and now it gave me some ideas, to be honest. Sadly, we are starting to delve away from the idea of making this as easy to install and maintain as possible, but nonetheless. Okay, so what do we have to choose from? Same version, same version, same version, and fallback. So those are pretty much carbon copies of themselves, and this is the fallback. So let's try and make some default entry to boot. Nice. Do you know what that means? We have broken the cycle of hatred. There is no VM Linux defined, and it didn't have to be defined. That was a leftover option. I was afraid it's not a leftover option. Perfect. So NVIDIA SMI is working. So the one last thing that's left to do and check is to finally properly tweak around the BTRFS snapshots. So let's say I want to boot from, because now that kinda gave me some ideas, I want to say. You know what? Actually, we could go and try ChatGPT route. I don't. Shit. Maybe DeepSeek, because ChatGPT I don't. Yeah. Shit. Nothing will let me in without logging in. Because I did wanted to try it as some questions. Have you explored Grub and line of themes? They might interest you. I've literally uninstalled Grub at the start of the stream, sadly, because it didn't really quite fit well with the unified kernel images. I assume you mean Plymouth themes. I'm not sure what's that. Providing flicker-free graphical boot process. That's interesting. Is available with stable package for the development version. Bootlock and does not. By default, Plymouth logs the boot messages into. But by the way, the problem is kind of weird. I think it has to do with NVIDIA drivers at some point. If you want silent boot, if you want to see the splash screen, if you want to disable the logging append, alternatively add, you must configure generate to create images including. So it seems that by default it hides verbose and debug messages. But yeah, I will check it out. It seems interesting. So by the way, let's go back to the BTRFS and restore rootfs snapshot. Roll back root snapshot in BTRFS. I am currently updating my kernel and firmware, so we'll get to regenerate our kernel image. If you now go missing from the stream, we will know what happened. How do I restore? What you have is a BTRFS file system with two subvolumes. Fedora is your default. Root snapshot test is the snapshot you have created. You simply boot using a different subvolume as your root file system. There are a few ways to do this. Renaming the subvolume, changing the default subvolume. Oh, yeah, kernel parameter. (2017). cd etc cmd line vim. You can also set the default subvolume to avoid having to explicitly state. I've never had my system break after a kernel update. I kinda have. Nothing serious, but I'm pretty sure it did happen once or twice. To specify BTRFS subvolume as a kernel parameters, you can use the root flags subvol path to subvolume. This tells the bootloader and the kernel where to find the root file system. Alternatively, you can use object ID, where object ID is the numerical ID of the subvolume. So ideally, if the unified kernel images can have baked in, or maybe systemd boot, define command cmd line. During the system startup, blah, blah, blah. I would like to have it just be there and prepared for me. The loader configuration is stored in the loader conf. EFI loader conf. Default archconf timeout console mode max editor no. So if we go to entries, there is nothing. If we open entries SRL type 1, and that's that. System deboot does not accept tabs for indentation. Use spaces instead. Default and timeout can be changed. Bootctl set default. Timeout 0. If you have timeout 0, boot menu can be accessed by pressing space or by holding it down constantly throughout the whole boot process. If the bootloader appears distorted, uses the wrong resolution, you can try to console mode auto. Okay, configuration, every last entry, adding loaders. So it seems that actually adding options that would automate booting from BTRFS snapshots is just easier in system deboot, but I don't think anybody has done it yet. Because basically what you need to do is to create a file like that and then give it some proper options for this right here. Oh, I'm sorry. So we can try doing that. I mean, to be honest, we can even install grub and have grub manage the BTRFS snapshots, but that's retarded as hell. So okay, so let's try that. Let's go to entries and create our entry. EFI Linux, Archlinux EFI. But we will tell it options, and it did say that this does not support tabs, which is weird, but okay. Cat rock command line. But instead of root, we will try and use the numerical ID of the subvolume. So 1, because in our we have 1 and 2. Let's try this. So now we have Linux boot manager, and we have Arch snapshot. So that was, we gave it our best, and our best was not enough. Power oof. Okay. So that entry will basically need some additional love, and maybe I've just passed the wrong ID. Maybe that previous root still needs to be present. I was afraid that we will boot into my Windows for a second there. Let's try the fallback for a second. It's twice as big. And it just works. Okay, maybe the BTRFS assistant will tell me a bit more. By the way, I don't think that my audio output is on my headphones anyway, so snapper number, change description, snapper settings, sub volumes. I should want to restore snapshots too. And there is a question mark, so maybe maybe this isn't as intelligent as I thought it is. Oh, it seems that food is almost here, so I literally have maybe like 3 minutes more. So one last try. cd EFI loader entries arch snapshot. So what were other methods? Quick. We'll do one last try before I go and finally eat. So we can also try this. But we can also... I do think that this might still be required after all. And instead of that, let's try this actually, because that's way more convenient. And our object ID is 1. So reboot, one last try, and I'll be going. So manager, snapshot, and will it work? It does not. Failed to mount on a real route. You are now being dropped into emergency shell. Sadly, we were not successful in that front. But you know, shit happens. Okay, as I said, my food has arrived and I need to go. Some closing notes, I don't know, like, subscribe if you enjoyed. I think that YouTube also boosts VODs and even the live streams whenever they are liked. If you want to chat more or ask some questions, I am available on Discord. The Discord invite link is available under, I think, any of my main channel YouTube videos. And I think I know what we'll be fixing next time. I can't promise you it will be tomorrow, but we will see about that. Known issue with Arch this month. Are there really any? I do think it's just because I do really try and finick around with stuff to make it understand. Other than that, Arch is pretty stable if you basically just install it and run it and use it. It's like any other Linux distro, to be honest. Okay, thank you all for being here once again, and I hope I'll see you next time.